Hi, I've clicked onto the global tropical overview for August the 10th, 2024. As is always the case in these videos, the default expression are mine alone, and if you're going to make any decisions ahead of any tropical cyclones, look to the local office, local emergency management, and local tropical cyclone warning center. So we have a couple systems still to talk about in the tropics, and one is going to be brief. It's going to be Tropical Storm Maria east of Japan. We're mainly going to focus today on now Invest 98L in the Atlantic, and I'll leave a timestamp to that if you want to skip ahead. But it's not going to be too long, as we're not going to spend too much time on Maria. As you can see on the satellite imagery with Tropical Storm Maria, it's not doing too well. The system has been really struggling from the effects it had a few days ago of wind shear and dry air. And it's been consistently trying to form itself in inner core again. But you can see that we really only have this one area of concentrated thunderstorms near the center. And it's very broad right now. We can see this if we look at ASCAT data from earlier. You could see this very broad wind field with this. And what this allows it to do is it allows it to pull in a lot more dry air from different places. That's one thing about smaller systems that they're good at. They're good at keeping dry air out because their circulations are so small. The issue with big systems is they're spread out over a greater area, and we have a lot of drier air around here, which you can see on water vapor. Well to the south of the system, we have very dry air. And with the circulation pulling in wind from the south, it's helping to pull in some of that dry air. And this has really just killed its chances of intensifying much at all as it comes towards the coast of Japan. Now, this is good news for Japan, as we were talking about yesterday, or not, a couple days ago rather, that the environment was favorable for the system to intensify a little bit. Yeah, you can see why we have this jet streak taking place north of it with a quickly departing upper trough well north of it. Now, this trough is now moving out and being replaced by higher pressure. You can see it there in the Sea of Japan, and this is going to now force the system towards Japan, and right now we're looking at landfall somewhere in the central part of the coastline, maybe as far south as Tokyo. Most models are honing in on this general region of Japan here, not really seeing many solutions to what we had a few days ago where they were coming into northern Japan, and it looks like we've decreased some solutions, having it parallel the coast and staying offshore. It looks like we are going to get this thing on shore and eventually into the Sea of Japan after that landfall. But right now, weak tropical storm. You can see on that ASCAT pass that the winds, maximum winds on the east side are only about maybe 35, 40 knots. It may intensify a little bit more. We do have that convection still going around the center, but nothing all too strong, not looking like a typhoon coming in here. But as always, there will be some heavy rain with this and some gusty winds, so stay safe as the system does come through. All right, we're going to move to the Atlantic for the rest of the video, as we have now Invest 98L across the tropical Atlantic. And this system is well out there, well away from the Caribbean still, but we're now seeing the system beginning to develop, hence the Invest designation. And we're also now looking at greater odds of a tropical cyclone coming through the Caribbean islands as we go into the early to mid part of next week. Now, if you look at the system right now, it is doing pretty well for itself. You can see that we've got southwesterly winds here, turning easterly north of this convection, and we have those winds turning down towards the south again on the western end of the convection. So that outlines that wave axis generally like that. Now, something I have noticed is we are seeing westerly winds as well on the south side of this, which is indicative of a low pressure system forming beneath this convection. This is right underneath that convection. And assuming it doesn't succumb to some of the shear it's dealing with, as there is some moderate shear that it will be dealing with, this could be its attempt to become a tropical cyclone within the next couple of days. Those odds have been increasing today. Now, I believe about 40% from the National Hurricane Center, but the 7-day odds are about 70%, or 80% rather, over the next 7 days. Now, there's not really much rotation that I can see in the mid-levels. There may be some that I can see some winds going towards the west, right about there towards the end of the loop, but nothing all too well defined in the mid-level. So the system does still have a lot of work to do, but it sure has a lot of time. If we look at the water vapor loop, which gives us a big picture of where it is, you can see this is the coast of South America, and the Caribbean islands are not even on this screen yet. So we're quite far away, and this system has a lot of real estate to work with before it gets to those islands. Now, you can see on this some of the shear it's dealing with. We do have some stronger upper level easterly winds, which is bringing some moderate mid to upper level shear. And this will be persisting for the next couple of days, and this could act as a limiting factor for the system as it approaches the Caribbean. But once it does get closer to the Caribbean islands, and you'll see this on the GFS, we have stronger winds with the trade winds that are usually stronger in the Caribbean. And these are more aligned with the speed of the wind aloft. So if I get a sounding over the system right now, you'll see that we have some weak surface winds, but we have, 20, 25, 30 knot upper level winds. So that's resulting in that moderate wind shear. But as it gets close to the Caribbean, we begin to see these winds increase at the surface. And as a result, you get the wind shear to decrease as you have a more aligned speed-wise, that is, profile throughout the atmosphere. And this, as you can see on the GFS, allows the system to develop into a tropical storm. And this is by Tuesday or Monday night, local time, as it's just approaching the Leeward Islands. And a lot of models are agreeing on this scenario of the system developing around this time on, say, Monday evening or into Tuesday before it comes into the Leeward Islands. We've sort of honed in on that idea of the storm forming. Now, of course, there may be some wiggle room there. We could have the system maybe suffer a bit more from the wind shear than models are anticipating. But as of right now, Monday, Tuesday, that seems like a good bet for getting the system to develop. And it certainly seems to be well on its way with the trends that we're seeing today. Now, the immediate question after this is, how much can it intensify once it does develop, once it goes through the Caribbean? Now, the environment is going to be favorable for it to intensify. You can see here on the GFS that we do have an upper trough sitting north of the Caribbean. But if the system is forming earlier, like models are anticipating, it's going to be able to fend off this trough. You can see we do have yellow colors here, but they're not deeper into orange. Like we have a trough up here off the US East Coast. That's deeper orange showing a stronger trough. This trough is not all too strong on these model forecasts. And this is easily, I guess, in a way manipulated by the storm itself, because as a storm gets stronger, it produces more convection, and we get more upper level high pressure draped over the system. You can see it there in the wind barbs, and this deeper blue right over the storm, which is right about here, that's its upper level high pressure system ballooning up as it continues to develop. And this upper level high pressure system is able to fight off this trough. It's able to push it away. You'll see it that earlier in this model run, the trough is actually down here getting towards Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. But as the system approaches, it pushed it further north. And this is going to create itself a lower wind shear environment. As remember, the trade winds and the upper level winds are going to be ideal here. They're not like they are right now, differentiating in speed. So we're decreasing that shear, and we're also removing this aspect of potential westerly shear aloft, which could rip apart the storm from this upper trough. And now this leaves us with a favorable environment in which the storm can take advantage of to intensify in. And as you can imagine, these models do begin to intensify it. You can see the GFS intensifies it quite significantly, actually. It gets it to become a hurricane in the Caribbean. And while I feel this may be a little bit too strong right now, it is certainly a possibility because we do again have that low shear environment. And really the only hindrance for the system is, Hispaniola or Puerto Rico, as we do have mountainous terrain there. So this could be, an intensifying storm as we go through the early to mid part of the week as it comes through the Caribbean islands. And for those in, the Leeward Islands, Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, it is definitely something to watch. And it's certainly something to be concerned about as the system does come through. Now, regardless of intensification, we could absolutely still have a lot of rainfall across especially Hispaniola and Puerto Rico. You don't need a strong hurricane to have very heavy rainfall with the mountainous terrain there. And that could itself be a very significant impact either way. Now, there's going to be a bunch of questions after this point. Where does it go after the Caribbean? I know there's going to be a lot of questions for the Turks and Caicos and Bahamas, the U.S. East Coast, Bermuda. There's a lot of uncertainty here, and this also plays into the Caribbean impacts as well. You see the GFS taking it south here, close to Hispaniola. This is only one possible track that the system could take. If we look at the ensemble, so this is showing you pretty much every ensemble that we have: the European, the GFS, the UK Met, and the Canadian. This is a super ensemble. Great website here. I'll leave a link to it in the description if you want to go to it. And this is showing you potential areas where the storm could be by Tuesday afternoon. You can see that we have areas like the GFS is showing in the northeastern Caribbean that could be going towards Hispaniola or Puerto Rico. But we've also got tracks well east of here, and some of these tracks actually in their runs go north of the Caribbean and completely avoid all of these Caribbean islands as it does intensify. And this is important for several reasons. One, it changes the impacts for the Caribbean. You know, if you get it tracking further north, you really decrease a lot of the impact that you could get here. Whereas if it goes south, it could get direct impacts to all these islands. But it's very sensitive, the pattern further north, and it's highly dependent on how the steering patterns change, but also where the storm tracks. Let me show you this on the GFS 500 millibар height anomaly plot. This is by Friday morning, local time. We have the storm here on the model over the Turks and Caicos Islands. We have several features in the subtropical latitudes to pay attention to. We've got a high pressure system across the central US. We've got this trough over the eastern United States. We've got a ridge further north. This is an anticyclonic wave break pattern. And we've also got a high pressure system here over the Azores. Now, you can imagine already how sensitive this is. If the storm is here over the Turks and Caicos, we have the storm already closer to, say, the US, the Bahamas, the Virgin Islands, or the Turks and Caicos Islands, rather. And this has potential for it to interact more with this trough. We've seen runs where this trough has interacted with the storm, I guess where it would be more intimately, and you can see on this run, it turns tilted negative, and we actually get it to interact favorably with the tropical cyclone to where it sort of hooks back here into the northeast and the Atlantic Canada region. But that's just one solution. If the storm is out east here of the Caribbean, now you've got it closer to this bridge. It's further away from this trough, and this would just be a out-to-sea solution. May impact Bermuda, but that could just allow the system to escape out to sea, perhaps with little land impacts. That would be great. But you can see the sensitivity. We have tracks that are ranging from a fully out-to-sea solution to solutions that are potentially hooking into Atlantic Canada or the northeastern United States. And we still even have some ensemble members showing potential for the system to come further west. You know, like if it interacts very strongly with the terrain of Hispaniola and weakens quite a bit, it would be more inclined to go further west. And we've even had some model runs, like on the GFS, to where the system comes up the spine of the Florida Peninsula and then up into the Carolinas. And this is an incredible amount of uncertainty that we have here. This is to be expected because, you know, we're 6 to 7 days out, but even for this time range, this is much more uncertainty than normal. This is a complex pattern for models to get correctly. There's a lot of moving parts here, and the storm itself, not even being formed yet, is causing a lot of issues in model runs. Because like I showed you, we have global models that are disagreeing, you know, what could be, let's just get a rough estimate here, 1,400 kilometers in distance or greater by, you know, this time. And that's huge difference. And that makes a huge difference in who gets what impacts for the storm. And I'm not going to speculate what I think is most likely here at all for anything going north because we don't know. And hopefully we can get more recon data, you know, upper low wind planes that can sample the environment across the Western Atlantic so we can get a little bit more certainty. But this one's going to be a very tough forecast. And ahead of time in the Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, the U.S. East Coast, the Bahamas or Bermuda, I keep mixing up geographies, and Atlantic Canada, make sure you're just prepared just in case the system does come through. It's a good idea to be prepared anyways because we're going into peak of hurricane season, but it's definitely something to watch over the next few days. And I'll, of course, try my best to get more videos coming out. We are getting to the time where university starts for their semesters in fall, so my upload schedule may be a little bit wacky because of that, but I'll try and get as many out as I can, as this is a very uncertain scenario, and there's certainly going to be a lot changing as we go throughout the next week. Plus, in the Atlantic, in fact, we could be looking at impacts well after a week in the US and Canada. That's all that I've got for today. Thanks for watching, and stay safe in Japan as Maria comes through. And like I said, I'll have more videos as we go throughout the next several days. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.